So I think there's something weird going on with these Hulu movies. Similar to Prey receiving almost universal praise, so is the new Hellraiser. And after watching it for myself, I'm not entirely sure why. Let's discuss.
Purely and simply evil.
Before I get started, I'd like to kindly ask that you hit the like button, and please subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.
Come on. Do it. Do it!
Yes, the new Hellraiser reimagining has finally arrived. And the word reimagining is starting to carry a bad connotation, at least in my eyes. If we take a look at the current landscape of horror in 2022, for my money, original horror has been kicking ass and taking names. But when Hollywood attempts to revisit these classic franchises, the results are typically underwhelming.
Whoopie fucking do. Hey, I'm impressed.
Maybe it's because we will all naturally compare it to the original. And let's be honest, in most cases, there is no comparison. But you invite that type of comparison and criticism if you market your film as going back to its roots. It's very hard to recapture the magic of the original film when you don't have the same creative minds working on these new projects that you had working on them back then. And I think Hellraiser 2022 is very clearly falling into that category as well.
That makes sense.
I do admire the effort to try to elevate the material above its more recent straight-to-DVD content. But if we're being honest with ourselves, straight-to-streaming is becoming the new straight-to-DVD. Just because something has a bigger budget doesn't mean the quality is going to be there. Streaming services are typically about creating as much content as possible to justify their price point.
Oh, you're right. And when you're right, you're right. And you're always right.
The original Hellraiser, for me, stands on its own as being one of the most unique horror experiences of my lifetime. The twisted imagination of Clive Barker brought us a story and imagery that will stick with you long after you watch that first movie for the first time. And in all seriousness, there was nothing in Hellraiser 2022 that made me feel even close to that. Now, I wouldn't say that there was anything about this movie that necessarily pissed me off about it, but in the end, it just felt very forgettable to me.
Don't waste my motherfucking time!
And Hellraiser, of all things, should not be forgettable. It should leave some kind of impact on you. I should be disturbed to my very core, but while watching it, I felt mostly boredom. The story involves a young woman who comes into the possession of a mysterious puzzle box, which comes with sadistic, supernatural forces who she believes is responsible for her brother's disappearance. The main character, or final girl of this film, is Riley. She is a troubled individual who is dealing with her own personal demons even before the Cenobites show up.
But you one crazy ass bitch!
And I think the writers and director of this movie were very clearly trying to give this character something for the audience to relate to. That is, after all, how you make life or death situations in movies resonate with people. But when it came right down to it, I really wasn't invested in her at all. Nor was I any of the side characters. They were all pretty expendable to me. And it just felt like their attempt to elevate these characters with this personal shit actually ended up hurting the movie more than helping it. Because all it really did was delay what we really came to see.
We give them what they want!
The Cenobites themselves were the one thing that I'm going to give at least a little bit of props to. I thought that their design and their appearance were very well done. Much more practical effects than I was expecting, and you know I appreciate that. But at the same time, the mystique around them wasn't really there for me. When I see Cenobites slowly stalking or ripping one of their victims apart, I should feel some kind of tension while watching that, and again I felt nothing.
If he dies, he dies.
Even the female Pinhead, which was a point of contention for a lot of people with this movie, from afar I really didn't mind her at all. I just thought that they didn't do enough to make this new Pinhead feel as intimidating or formidable as the previous version of him did. There's a pretty decent amount of gore in this movie, which is expected. It did feel much tamer compared to what we are accustomed to seeing from this franchise. And yes, there was what appeared to be CGI gore at times, and let's be honest, nobody wants that.
Put some effort into it!
I also want to talk for a second about the look of this film. This movie has a very dark and brooding visual style, with this kind of diluted, filtered color palette. Now, I understand from an outside perspective how that would seem appropriate for a story like this. But in this case, it does make the movie look and feel very generic tonally. It was just too clean looking to me. I think one of the most impressive things about the original Hellraiser is how it brings these nightmares to life in fairly bright visual detail. Also, the aged visual style of that movie helps it to feel that much more unsettling. Sometimes enhanced, crisp visuals don't enhance the story like you think it's going to.
Then why the fuck didn't you say so?
I guess what I'm saying is that some things just aren't meant to be updated. They are very much a product of their time and work best in that time. I always say this, and I think it rings true here: you can't reinvent perfection. It's hard for people to accept a new version of something that was already beloved to begin with. I can imagine that the original Hellraiser was a huge inspiration for a lot of upcoming filmmakers during that time. And I just can't see anyone having the same reaction to the 2022 reimagining. In fact, I think this movie is pretty much par for the course with the more forgettable Hellraiser sequels.
This is whack! I can't get jiggy with this shit!
Overall, obviously, Hellraiser 2022 did nothing to impress me. I wasn't disturbed, I wasn't scared, I wasn't inspired, I wasn't even entertained. I felt basically nothing while watching it, and that's why I'm going to give it the Careless Sam Gerard.
I don't care!
Y'all be cool. Right on.